I am 83 years old, and for the first time in my entire life, I truly understand why my parents did what they did. Not partially, not in some vague, sentimental way you feel at a funeral and then forget by Tuesday. I mean, I understand it in my bones, in the marrow, in the quiet of a house where nobody calls anymore and the clock on the wall ticks louder than it used to. It took me 83 years to get here. 83. You'd think a man would figure it out sooner, but no. I was too busy being right, too busy being young, too busy being angry at two people who loved me more than I ever deserved. Let me take you back. I grew up in a small house, nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that smelled like coffee in the morning and onions by evening. My father worked with his hands, came home with grease under his fingernails and silence on his tongue. My mother worked too, though nobody called it work back then. She kept that house together like it was a ship in a storm, and she was the only one who knew how to steer. And me? I was the kid sitting at the dinner table with my arms crossed, convinced the whole world was against me. I argued with them constantly. My father had rules. Rules about curfew, rules about chores, rules about who I could spend time with. And my mother? She had this way of saying things quietly that cut deeper than any shout. She would look at me and say, "You'll understand someday." And I would roll my eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't get stuck. I remember thinking, every single day, they just don't get me. I thought I was smarter, more aware, more alive than these 2 tired people who went to bed at 9 o'clock and never seemed to want anything exciting. I thought their caution was cowardice. I thought their strictness was control. I thought their silence meant they had nothing important to say. I was a fool, a complete, confident, well-intentioned fool. When I turned 18, I left that house like it was on fire. Couldn't wait. Packed a bag, said some things I wish I could take back, and walked out the front door without looking behind me. My mother stood on the porch. I know that now because my sister told me years later. She stood there and watched me walk down that road until I disappeared. My father stayed inside. He sat at the kitchen table and didn't say a word, just sat there with his coffee getting cold. I didn't call for 3 weeks. When I finally did, my mother answered on the first ring. She didn't yell, she didn't guilt me. She just said, "Are you eating enough?" That was it. "Are you eating enough?" And I said, "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." Like it was nothing. Like her worry was an inconvenience. For decades after that, I lived my life the way young people do. Fast, reckless, certain. I made mistakes I don't even want to list, because some of them still sting when I think about them in the dark. I married. I divorced. I married again. I raised children of my own. I buried friends. I changed jobs. I moved cities. I did all the things a life demands of you, whether you're ready or not. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, something started to shift. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow. Like a crack in a dam that starts so small you don't even notice the water seeping through. I started noticing patterns, little echoes of my parents in my own behavior. The way I would tell my son to be home before dark and feel my father's voice coming out of my mouth. The way I would sit at the kitchen table after everyone went to bed, just sitting there in the quiet, the way my father used to. The way I would worry about my daughter and say nothing, just like my mother, because I didn't want to push her away the way I had been pushed. I started to see their sacrifices. Not the big dramatic ones, the invisible ones, the ones nobody claps for. My father turning down a better job in another state because my mother's sister was sick and she needed to be close. My mother wearing the same coat for 6 winters so my sister and I could have new shoes for school. The way they never took a vacation, not once, not in my entire childhood, and never complained about it. Not once. I began to understand something that made me sit down in my living room one evening and just stare at the wall for a long time. The room was dim, just a single lamp in the corner, throwing weak yellow light across the carpet. The house was empty. My second wife had passed 2 years before. My children lived in other states. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen, and I could hear a dog barking somewhere far away, the kind of sound that makes silence feel even heavier. I sat in that chair, and I could smell something faint, like old wood and dust, and maybe just a ghost of my mother's kitchen. And it hit me. Not like a lightning bolt, more like a tide coming in, slow, heavy, impossible to stop. The very things I resented were the very things that saved me. Every rule my father enforced I hated, every single one. But those rules taught me discipline when the world tried to break me. Every quiet warning my mother gave, I ignored. But those warnings echoed in my head at the exact moments I needed them most. Every time they said no and I slammed my bedroom door, they were building a wall around me. Not a prison wall, a fortress wall. They were protecting me from things I couldn't even see yet. They weren't controlling me. They were preparing me. They weren't being strict. They were being brave. Because let me tell you something about being a parent that nobody warns you about. It is the loneliest kind of courage. You make decisions that your children will hate you for, and you make them anyway. Because you can see around corners they can't. You absorb anger and resentment and eye rolls and slam doors, and you swallow all of it, and you keep loving. You keep showing up. You keep saying the hard thing when the easy thing would make everyone smile. That takes more strength than anything I have ever done in my life. And here's the part that twists the knife. The part that makes me laugh and cry at the same time. They never needed me to understand. Not back then. Not when I was 18 and storming out the door. Not when I was 30 and too proud to call. Not when I was 50 and starting to see the first flicker of truth. They never once demanded that I get it. They never said, after everything we've done for you. They never held a scoreboard. They just lived it. Day after day, year after year. They just loved me through every version of myself. Even the versions that didn't deserve it. Especially those versions. My father died when I was 61. Heart attack. Quick. No warning. I drove 4 hours to that same small house and walked through the front door, and the kitchen still smelled like coffee. His chair at the table was pushed back slightly, like he had just gotten up and would be back any minute. I sat in that chair, and I put my hands flat on the table, and I cried like I was 5 years old. Not because he was gone, because I never told him. I never said, "Dad, I understand now. I get it. You were right about almost everything, and I was wrong about almost everything. And I am sorry it took me this long." My mother lasted another 11 years, 92 years old. Tough as leather, soft as bread. In her last year, I visited every week. I would sit beside her bed and hold her hand, and she would look at me with those eyes. Those same eyes that watched me walk down that road when I was 18. And she would say, "You turned out good." That's all she said. You turned out good. Like that was enough. Like that was everything. And maybe it was. Now I sit here, 83 years old, in a quiet house full of photographs and memories and the faint smell of a life that went by faster than I ever thought possible. I think about them every day, not with sadness, not anymore, with gratitude so deep it feels like a prayer. And I want to talk to you now, you, the one watching this. You, the one who is maybe 25 or 35 or 45 and still carrying frustration toward your parents. Still holding on to that old story that they didn't understand you, that they were too hard, too soft, too absent, too present, too something. Let me tell you what I know. Your parents were not perfect. Mine weren't either. Nobody's are. They made mistakes. Some of them made big ones. I am not here to excuse harm or tell you to forgive what is unforgivable. That is your journey and yours alone. But if your parents loved you, if they tried, if they showed up even when they were tired and scared and broke and didn't know what they were doing, then I am asking you to do something I wish I had done 50 years ago. Look at them again. Not through the eyes of the child who was hurt or confused or angry. Look at them through the eyes of someone who has lived long enough to know that love doesn't always look like love in the moment. Sometimes it looks like a rule. Sometimes it looks like a no. Sometimes it looks like silence at a kitchen table with coffee getting cold. Call them. Visit them. Write them a letter. Or if they are gone, sit somewhere quiet and say it out loud. Say, I understand now. I finally get it. Because understanding isn't about agreement. It never was. It is about perspective. It is about standing far enough back from the painting to see what it actually looks like instead of pressing your nose against the canvas and seeing only smudges. They were not perfect, but their love was a blueprint, a rough, handwritten, coffee-stained blueprint for how to survive this life. And if you are willing to look at it honestly, you will find your own answers in it. I carry my parents with me every single day, in every decision I make, in every word I speak to my grandchildren, and every time I bite my tongue instead of saying the easy thing. They are in me. They built me. Even when I fought them, they were building me. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the clock is ticking, and the lamp is throwing that same weak yellow light across the room, I close my eyes and I whisper to myself, I finally understand you, Mom and Dad. It took me 83 years. Don't let it take you that long.